Hi, Leah. So nice to see you again on this sunny
Hi,
day in
Chrissy.
Berlin.
Nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
Of course, I'm so excited to chat with you because you have one of the most interesting backgrounds I've seen in a while. So, my first question is looking back in your career, between all the companies you've started and all the senior leadership roles you've had, what is the thread that connects all of that?
If I look back, I think the common thread isn't entrepreneurship or corporate roles or like tech startups whatsoever. I think it's that I'm drawn to environments where things are not defined yet. So I grew up looking at my parents, my sister, carving their own paths in business, and it's something that was just embedded in me from early days. I thought about it a little bit, and I've realized that I've repeatedly stepped into places with very big ambiguity and very broad scope of work, whether it's roles or the business itself, where the structure needed to be built from scratch. So whether it was the most recent entrepreneurship adventure with dirt bike tours or stepping into fast scaling companies, the pattern was always the same. It's like things are messy, things are fast evolving, and the structure and the definitions were needed to be created in order to make it work.
It's so interesting. So, do you think that if you didn't see your family getting into entrepreneurship, do you still think you would have followed that path in such a natural way? Or do you think that was kind of key for you to being so open to starting your own thing?
I think it was a very important basis for that because it's just I think things that you observe as a child are something that you grow with. You know, it shapes your world. So it made it easier for me to be open to that and consider that. It's very difficult to answer the question. I think I would like to think that I would still take those paths, but I think that helped a lot for sure. So, and yeah, I do think that was very important part for me.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I also think about that a lot because I've also seen a lot of people in my family choose entrepreneurship more out of survival than just because they wanted to.
Yeah.
So with like, having an immigrant family, and I was actually the first person to get a degree in my family to go to university. So um yeah, for the rest of my family, like, it just felt like the only option, right? Whereas, like, I kind of had that option, but I felt really attracted to doing my own thing. So it's quite interesting to think about how our lived experience and our background, like, really influences the choices that we make, or maybe even our risk tolerance, right?
But I think that urgency that you mentioned with your family, that they just had to do it, I think that helps a lot. And this is one of the things that I think is also stopping some people from actually developing that path. Because if you don't have that urgency, you feel comfortable, you know, then it just becomes like a nice have and not that you just have to push through it.
Exactly. But now things seem to be changing, so let's see what the future holds. It looks very interesting, the future of work. Anyway, I'm diverging. I'm going off on a completely different path. I want to hear much more about you and your career. So, I'm really curious about what you're doing now. So, you're chief of staff at Mmaah, right? And the chief of staff role is so interesting to me because it's one of those roles where you're expected to act a founder and you have like limited resources, very high ambiguity, but you're expected to kind of know everything about how the business works. How do you think like your background in entrepreneurship has helped you to show up in that kind of role?
I think it's for me again, this is like a lot of personal experiences and not so much like any rules that I'm saying would work for everyone. But part of it was growing up in that environment. Part of it was like that my first career choices, my very first professional path that I took was very founder adjacent. So I was working in a very early stage startup focused on sustainability, and that very little money to it, so we had to be like super scrappy and really understand everything in very small details, so we can make those trade-offs and make those decisions that impact things in a huge way. I think having that like from the very start of my work life, having that element that paved like how I was going through all the next stages, how I was choosing the jobs that I was taking later on, with again the right place or circumstances for me to be able to shape things again, because that's addictive, being there and seeing how things are done, and with these small things in the beginning having huge impact on creating processes and everything. It's just addictive, and I think for this role that I'm having now, I think it's crucial for me to understand those things and operate well in that environment. So being like a link between the founders and then the rest of the company and an environment like this is, and being able to see things cross discipline and cross department and how those links connect, and being able to jump from very tiny operational issues that for small scale company are very much what we do as well, but jumping from that in 1 hour to a huge decision that is impacting like the future going forward, like this ability of not only seeing things through how they will impact the work of not just one department, but also being able to like switch from very like solving hands-on things. Recently that we went to some restaurants, and with the nice weather now we needed to make sure that atmosphere is the right for the customers. So we decided that it's super hot, so we need to open the doors, but we don't have the door stoppers. We're like folding, the trays and stuff, pushing under doors. And then you go from this, solving like one small thing, but that is impacting like the customers who are there, from this to like talking about the strategy going 5 years forward. So I think that is definitely like something that I took away from my founding days.
Yeah, that's such a founder mindset, right? To work on even
Yes.
like the smallest details. Very interesting. Okay. So you think like context switching is super important, right?
I think it is. And like not being, I do believe that this is important for every stage of the company, to being sensitive to all those small things, and not losing touch with what your company is at its core.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are especially like a solo entrepreneur, what I was in my recent venture, you have to do all the things, but there's nobody else. There's nobody else to rely on. If you are not an expert in marketing, but you have to do marketing, then you just do marketing. There's no
Yeah,
other way. You have
exactly.
to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. But also when you're in a company, as you said, you can also be an entrepreneur, let's say. You don't have to only
Yeah,
have your own companies to be able to do those things. I guess it depends a little bit
definitely.
on the environment, right? And what's kind of the stage of the company and so on. But there are definitely opportunities that you can learn that skill set in a job as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think it takes the mindset. If you're in an environment that is fostering that, like that was in some of my role, there was no another way to be successful than just to be entrepreneurial of your own area of work. Then you learn those same skills, or very close to being entrepreneur in your own business. I think the whole entrepreneurship term is a little bit romanticized,
Mm-hmm.
because I do think that similar skill sets can be developed within the company uh, if you have the right sense of like ownership and like owning outcomes, and not just tasks.
Do you have any tips for somebody who's looking for this kind of experience within a company? Like what kind of roles or companies they should look for?
I think early stage startups are the very best place to build that skill set, where you have to work cross departments and understand all the dependencies. And the sector of that is changing. For a couple years ago, I would say tech. Right now, I think it's much broader than that. For me, a couple years ago, that was Lime, that was Volt. But right now, I think the scope is just becoming much wider than just that.
Okay. Okay. So my next question is more about what advice you have for people that are thinking to start a business while they have a full-time job. So a lot of people think that you have to choose one or the other. Do you think that is a binary choice where you have to either pick the job or the side business, or do you think people can do both?
I think people can do both. And again, it comes down to like the skill set that you're developing in your main job. Because again, if you are doing entrepreneurial things at the company, like this will be increasingly easier for you to also start your own business without this being a trade-off necessarily. In my opinion, it all comes down to your mindset, how understanding you are of what entrepreneurship actually means, and not being surprised by that, by how much work there is. But of course, it depends on the person a little bit about time capacity and all of that. But I do believe that both can be done. I don't think it's a trade-off necessarily. It's about time management and actually putting the work in.
So that being said, why do you think most side hustles fail to actually turn into a real business?
Oh, and I'm saying that on my own experience as well. This is like looking at the things that I have tried or have done in the past. There is like a couple of traps that I've seen myself and people around me falling into, and one of them we already touched upon. So the no urgency trap. So
Mm,
in many cases, when I was working on projects with teams as well, like you could see that, some of those projects that were great ideas or shitty ideas, doesn't matter. Like they were either way just not followed through, because you didn't have to, you didn't have to. You
mm,
were fine. You're fine with your job, with your salary. You didn't have the need to actually see it through. So like this is one kind of filter, and then the second filter is the next step that again, observing myself, I've seen it happening, is that the initial excitement when you have the idea, oh my god, this is amazing, this is the market opportunity, this is whatever, and you work on it, kind of like people, again, super used example, but kind of when people go to the gym in January, like all of them are at the gym in January, and then like putting all this work in January, but then in March, not seeing enough results quickly enough, and then they just give up. And I think this is something that I've seen again with me and my teams happening quite often, that you just don't see results after a very short time. You don't see them. You get demotivated and you give up. You forget. You put less work. So having a routine and actually treating it as what it is, like it's not a task to do. You have to invest, you have to be disciplined and have routines. Again, I'm not talking about like this very overhyped, like kind of getting up at 5 in the morning and doing all
doing
those
the
things.
ice bath and
Exactly,
2 hours
exactly.
of journaling.
Because then it becomes overwhelming, and then this becomes the task, like this,
Exactly.
keeping the routine becomes, it should be a support system and not some like your goal, if your goal is to have those routine to help you stay on track. So I don't think, based on what I've seen, that the bad ideas are where we tend to fail, but like not seeing things through, not having enough motivation, urgency to actually proceed with that. Because even when we fail, if the idea is bad, if there is like in the end not enough product market fit, or anything that is validated, then we learn from that, and then you already had
Exactly.
some exposure to it. So I wouldn't say that this is not seeing it through, like the seeing it through, failing, going again and again until you make it, but
Yeah.
just not getting to a stage where you get response. I think this is the biggest drop off.
Definitely. And I think it's connected to your why as well. So the first thing is why you're actually starting the business in the first place. As you said, there needs to be high urgency, but also high pain, right?
Yeah,
It's the same with market demand for any product or service. If there's no high pain and high urgency, then you're also not going to get paying customers that easily. So it's kind of from both
exactly.
sides, from the entrepreneur side of, okay, I have high pain and high urgency to make this business work. And then also from the customer side, that I have high pain and high urgency to actually pay for this thing, to help me get a result, to solve something, or avoid pain or whatever it is. So yeah, those are really important points. Thanks so much for
Yeah,
sharing.
of course.
One more just on this topic. If you would give advice for anyone who's thinking to start something, apart from just persisting to keep going, keep validating your idea, what else would you give as advice to anyone who's maybe never done it before? Maybe they didn't grow up in an entrepreneurial environment where it was quite normal for people in their family to do it, and they're thinking of doing it now. Maybe they have some ideas. What would you recommend them to do first?
Okay, you told me not to say discipline. That would be my first thing. No, but
Say
really,
it.
I'm gonna, I'm gonna say two things. Okay, one, it's not gonna be discipline, but still to go for it in a small scale, like something that doesn't mean that you have to quit your job, doesn't mean that you have to invest crazy amounts of money, but just validate it in a small portion of the market or the lowest effort possible MVP, just to see if you like working on it. Go through some initial process of that. And the second one that I would say was very important for me, and this is like a lesson that I carry with me, and that was before I decided to quit my job and go do my dirt bike tours. A lot of people were telling me, "Are you insane? Why would you do that?" You know, it's not very common. I'm in my 30s, and to do dirt bike tours in Cyprus for women suddenly, you know, so that was uncommon. And a lot of people were advising me against it or asking me to think about it twice, and because it's risky. And that thing stayed in my head and it was in my head for so long. I was trying to analyze it, like why this word risky stayed in my head. And then I understood that for me, risky didn't mean starting this project or seeing it through. For me, risky meant actually relying only on external factors for my safety. So for me, I
Mm.
decided in that moment, and that might change over years. Maybe in 10 years, it will mean a different thing for me. But at that point, the advice was good, like to avoid risk situations. But for me, at that point, the risky situation was staying where I was without seeing it through. Like that was a risk that I actually saw. So I think some reflection and talking to people and seeing how they respond and reflecting back on that, how that makes us feel. Like, are they bringing any actual worries in our heads and why that is, and addressing that with our own logic, whatever it is that you feel right now that is risky or, you know, stupid, or how is that something that resonates with you, and if
Mm.
yes, then why? I think that was a really important part for me, actually understanding why that one comment was stayed in my head for so long, and then being able to explain it in my own world. That was really big to move forward with confidence.
That's actually amazing. I love what you said there. And this is why you're one of the coolest people I've ever met. Because honestly, it's just such a fresh take. So many times I think people are held back by other people's opinions, right? What people around them say or what is normal and so on, especially if you're from like a more collectivist society, let's say. But even if you're not, we often think, this is what's normal and therefore like this is what I'm going to do. But I love what you said about actually like listening to yourself and reflecting whether that's really true for you, because what's true for somebody else might not be true for you.
Yeah.
And I totally resonate with what you said. For me too, it was on paper, I had an amazing job. It was very successful, right? I was like on track to reach all my goals in my career and so on. But for me, it was a big risk staying in that job because I was feeling a bit unfulfilled. I realized like there's so many other things I want to do. I love entrepreneurship. So that was the risk for me, is staying there. And people didn't get that. So you get it.
I just wanted to add that I don't think it's like one thing to keep in mind, though, that if you're a solo entrepreneur, especially, so also talking to you, uh, it does get lonely. So I think still talking to people, being critical about what they say all the way throughout the journey is important to not get like
Mm-hmm.
lost in your own track of thought. But then again, being very critical about if this is how you want your life to look, and if this is also what you believe, but still having those, having that feedback accepted and consulted, I think it's important.
That's a good point. And a lot of people do try to give you advice, right?
Yeah.
For a lot of different things. But I notice, especially like in business, when you have a business, a lot of people will try to like give you advice on what to do, what not to do, and so on. Um, I personally like to think of like 3 things when taking advice. One of them is, has this person done it before? The
Mm.
other one is, do they have the same goals as me, or do I want to be like them? And the third one is, do they have my best interest in mind?
Yeah,
Right? Like
that's
those are the
very
3 things
helpful.
I'm like, okay, like I don't am I gonna take your advice? Maybe, but only if these 3 things are true. Because if you've never done it and you're giving me advice about how to do it, I'm not sure I want to take it, right?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
people always want to give advice, so
Exactly.
so it's good that you have that filter.
Yeah, and it's usually with good intentions, right? So they don't mean any harm or
Definitely.
anything like that. Yeah. Good. Okay, my final question to you is, what do founders and operators tend to get wrong about each other?
Yeah, I think one thing that founders get wrong about the operators is how much clarity is needed. You have to think like cross department, cross area. You have to think about a lot of different things when making decisions, and the rest of the team might not be aware of that, or people that are not in that position might not have that context. So the
Mm,
clarity in order to still be a high performing individual as an operator, like this clarity is very needed. And I think this is a thing that works both ways actually. So from the operator perspective, it's sometimes it gets confusing or frustrating, like thinking like how certain decisions are made, or like why this like direction has changed, and like this seems random, right?
mm,
Because you don't have that clarity about like what other variables are being taken into account, that something impacting this department doesn't necessarily only link to this department. So I think in general this doesn't come from lack of competence or anything. It's just a lack of proper communication at
mm,
certain points, that you just miss some things because you're thinking in certain way as a founder, as an operator, and like how to link those things. So this is something that especially as a chief of staff now, like I'm trying
mm.
to really do to be the link and the translation between those two worlds.
Yeah, you're basically the glue that's keeping everything together as well. Nice. Do you have any final thoughts or words that you want to share about leadership, about entrepreneurship, careers in general?
Yeah, I think maybe one that came again from my last experience. I had different like business ideas I was working on, but the last one was one that I was like super passionate about: dirt bikes. Right, this is something that is very dear to my heart, will forever be. But this is also important not to keep that as a determinant, like that has to be present to create a business. I think idea can be good even if it's not something we are passionate about. It can have a great business impact, and you can be excited about it because of the people you work with, or about how your customers respond to your product or service. But the passion part, it helps in the beginning for sure. Like it helped me, in the first couple of months to like push through a lot of things, that because it was so pleasant, because it was like the bikes, and it was just makes things much easier in the beginning. But in the end, all the other stages were pretty much the same. So you still needed to put work. So I would say that looking for the perfect idea is not the necessity in that case. It's just data in the end. If the idea
Mm.
is good and there is a need for that, and you have the right tools to bring it to life, then that is enough.
Very nice advice. And that's basically the time that we have for today. So thank you so much, Leah. It was amazing chatting
Thank
with
you
you
so
and
much,
seeing a little
Chrissy.
bit inside your brain.
Thank you so much, Chrissy. It was lovely.